Welcome to Deep Dive. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict, and I want to welcome everyone out there for joining us today. I'm so excited to introduce my friend, Mika Yamamoto. Thanks for joining us, Mika.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
Mika has had one of the epic adventures over the last 12 months that we will dive into here. I interviewed her at Hudson Yard facility at SAP here less than 12 months ago.
Yep.
And you've been everywhere since then, Mika.
I have. Yeah, I have been literally everywhere. I've been on two or six planes every week since I saw you. So it's definitely been an adventure.
So why don't you tell us about the last 12 months?
Well, 12 months ago, I was probably sitting in Hudson Yards, or could have been in Waldorf, Germany with SAP.
Yes.
And there I was Chief Digital Marketing Officer, really driving the digital transformation. So we were trying to make sure that we could personalize the interactions that we had with our customers, whether they're really big customers or the smallest of small customers across 180 countries. And so that was a massive shift in terms of culture, in terms of changing the KPIs of how we rewarded our marketers, a whole new skill set that we're trying to drive in terms of up-leveling the skills, and really importantly, tying together the processes between sales and marketing and driving a huge link with our CIO and IT. And so it was literally not just a transformation for marketing, but a transformation for how we interacted with our customers. So it's marching along there. The team is still working on it, but along the way, this unicorn and amazing possibility came up to go and be the president of Marketo, which is the culmination. It was like this perfect combination of a product I love, an incredible team, and the desire to get to drive some scale in the company and get to be the president of the company and expand in terms of what I could do from a career standpoint. So I jumped at that opportunity. Anyone who knew me was like, oh my gosh, that's so perfect. Like that conversion of those three things is perfect.
Absolutely. That is your role. You could retire from that role, right?
I wish. No, I have three sons I have to put through university soon. I definitely am not in that position. No.
So you were going to stay there for the next 20 years, right?
At SAP or at Marketo? Yeah, no, well, either. I mean, I think that the thing that is common with my skill set is that, I've gone into companies, whether it's Microsoft or Amazon or, SAP, and taken something and the company has said, hey, we want to get here in terms of a new channel or a new transformation, and we're here, go figure it out. And that's been kind of the common theme in my entire career. So, that's what I did at SAP. That's what I was, working on at Marketo. And then boom, the second day that I started at Marketo, Adobe, signed the letter of intent to buy us. So quickly went into due diligence and integration work.
So those 2 days, it was a turnaround for you, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh. I was like landing, and we were doing this strategic planning work. It was an exec offsite that we were having. And we were sitting there and we're planning on what we're going to do to drive growth for the future. And then, day two.
Time out.
Time out. Plan change. So, it just goes to show that you just got to be ready for anything. And so we just went with that. And COVID, 3 days later, we were in due diligence talks with Adobe, which was really exciting.
Oh, that is phenomenal.
Yeah.
So tell us about, how are each of those roles a little bit different from each other? We can go all the way back to Amazon. You had leadership responsibilities. When you look back at those, how would you define each of them as being different?
Amazon was different because it was greenfield, right? It was a clean slate. It wasn't they had never established. It was ironic, right? It was Amazon wanting to open up a bookstore. So, for all the drama that happened around bookstores when Amazon started selling books, now Amazon was going to go into the business of selling books and devices. And so we had the embarrassment of riches of having all the data, customer data by block, of how customers buy and why they buy from Amazon.com, and translating that into a physical environment was the charter. So that was, green slate. Wow. But we had the opportunity to be a really well-funded startup as a retailer in Amazon, and having, an incredible rich set of data to be able to open up that store. And so it was a blending of online and offline experiences to drive the store. So that was a clean slate. And then you go think of SAP. SAP is a 40-year-old company where, have driven growth from on-premise software with really big companies in a very manual way, like through relationships, which is actual physical relationships, and really wanting to expand into the 180 countries that we're doing business in, with smaller companies where you can't have a 100-person account team to service them. And so it was a real big shift on a mindset of how we treat our customers and how we're going to reach our customers and still delight them and have that connection, but do so digitally. And so it was a culture change, it was a skill change, it was change of KPIs, it was change of the tech stack. But it was, making sure that we preserve the value of the DNA of the company that was born 40 plus years ago, and modernize it without losing the essence that is SAP. So it was totally different. And then you look at Marketo and Adobe. This is one standalone. Marketo's one standalone, product business unit, where Adobe has, he sells into consumers, to large enterprises, and has a whole host of solutions for the enterprise. And so it's like, how do we then blend into the portfolio so that the Adobe portfolio is better for having Marketo, and Marketo is better for being part of the Adobe portfolio. So I'm working a lot on how we integrate those two.
Oh, that's brilliant. So to the best of your knowledge, what was Adobe looking for with the Marketo acquisition?
Adobe is looking for, Adobe has been epically successful in every segment that it's participated in. I think looking for more strength in the enterprise space. Marketo brings with it a really great track record and traction in the B2B space. Adobe has done really well at targeting, B2C focused enterprise customers. And so the thesis around buying Marketo is, let's get the ability and, bolster our ability to really drive some value inside of B2B companies. And so that's number one. Number two, let's actually look at how we can drive down market. So Marketo has a ton of traction in mid-market companies and small businesses worldwide. And that's also a place where Adobe has been looking to expand. And so it's an expansion effort in the addressable market that it could have with Marketo itself, but also bring along with it the portfolio of products that Adobe has.
Thank you for pulling back the curtains and showing us that, Mika. Now let's talk about the role of the CMO and just marketing leadership in general. How have you kind of seen that role evolve over the last 3 to 5 years? There's so much changing. The skill sets, the responsibilities. How have you seen that evolve?
It's a great question, and you see it evolve in different companies in different ways. I think that on either ends of the bell curve, if you think about the role, there's sort of the brand focus of the role, right? You're the brand steward. What does the company stand for? On the other end, you start to see a lot more participation of the CMO in driving the revenue and the growth of the company. And so it's a balance of both, because you need to have a really strong brand and you need to drive the value and the growth of the company. But the role is evolving to understand how the company operates and understand the business objectives of the company, understand the technology stack on how the customer experience is driven through technology. And the role is changed. A lot of CMOs who are more, modern CMOs participate, and they have a seat at the table on the overall enterprise strategy, on the overall growth strategy, on the product strategy. And so I think that it's no longer a single siloed function off to the side or a cost center. It's now in, great companies that are seeing really tremendous growth. It's now, an integral business function to drive growth, and seen as someone at the table. So through forecasting efforts and in efforts where the company is talking about shareholder value, marketing's at the table as well.
Oh yeah, with digital interactions increasingly moving online, or all interactions moving increasingly online, and you have all the data around those interactions. You have everything from customer acquisition to customer success. Operations are increasingly online. Of course, our processes are being automated. They're online. Boy, I can see it. And you proved it, moving from that CMO role into a president role in a company. So, I can see that as being absolutely a trend out there as well. So given that reality, what skills would you suggest the CMO should really be investing in?
There's the traditional skills that you have from a marketing standpoint. I think really it's the knowledge of, there's sort of this business acumen component to it. I think that speaking in a language that the whole company understands so that salespeople can resonate with. And so I think that successful CMOs that are able to get a seat at the table and, be seen more as just the marketing function, but seen as, really important part of the executive team to drive the growth for the company is, speaking in terms and understand in terms that the business is run by. So not speaking in marketing terms where everyone has to interpret what you're talking about, but speaking in terms of, revenue growth, of acquisition, of retention, and understanding how marketing plays a role there. But also understanding the overall business and how it runs, understanding the technology itself. So it's really getting in deep with understanding not just the MarTech stack, but understanding, how customer experience is actually driven through the product, how it's driven through sales, and just getting how all of those pieces actually drive the overall customer experience is really, really important for, a CMO who wants to be, again, a seat at the table as one of the key leaders for the direction of the company and not just how the company drives its marketing efforts.
Oh yeah, I can see how the time at SAP was also useful because you're getting the vision of the whole ERP, the end-to-end system,
right.
The whole works, and then the role of the marketing engine and SAP CX, the role those things play, everything. I mean, that could give you a good end-to-end view. So I just see that as useful too.
It's totally useful. I think you have to have better relationships or different relationships with, you have to lock arms with the CIO, right? I mean, there's no way you can actually unlock the value of what you can drive, through the customer experience unless you're talking to the CIO because you need access to the tech stack, right? And if you don't have really integrated tech stack with what you're trying to do in marketing, you don't have access to the customer data, and therefore your, how you interact and how you drive growth is really limited. You have to lock arms with sales. Yeah. And so establishing one customer experience, not a marketing customer experience and a sales customer experience, but one common customer experience, because the customer doesn't care. The customer doesn't care if sales is connecting with them or support or customer success or marketing. They just want a great experience.
Yes.
And so marketing being really tied to sales and establishing a trusting relationship versus the typical relationship, which is, I don't know what marketing does. I have to do it myself. If you're in sales, that's the typical thing you'll hear is, what marketing does, they don't get our business. I don't get what they do. I have to, make the money for the company. And what marketing says is they don't get what we do. They don't value what we do. And we do lots for them, but they do nothing with it. And so we got to break down those barriers and say, look, we have one customer. The customer doesn't care if it's marketing or sales. So let's get some common ground in terms of how we're going to interact with this customer. And that's everything. That's a cultural shift. That's a data shift. That's a, shared KPI shift is possible. But I think, great companies link the two. They link the functions of sales and marketing. Great companies have the CIO have really tight relationships with sales, with marketing, and across the company versus being a separate, a separate entity that sits off to the side.
Oh, that's brilliant. And you know what? I'm going to talk to my audience out there now. You need to listen to what Mika says about technology because before we went live, we were troubleshooting audio and video things. And man, she was walking it through it. She was going into the system setting and releasing the video and checking the audio. She is good. So she knows what she speaks about. So let's talk about that theme around technology. As a CMO, how much technology do you really need to know? And what would you identify as kind of the major areas of technology you should really have a handle on?
I think that it depends on what you're trying to, what the overall strategy of the company is, right? I mean, there's different companies that are really trying to drive growth and acquire new companies. There's different companies that are really focused on, look, we've got a ton of customers, but we're really trying to retain them and trying to drive service and support. So I think it's a bit of familiarity and understanding of, what your business objectives are to be able to focus and say, okay, well, how can, knowing the business and the business objectives and the, business priorities, and then saying, how can technology support that? Just because I say that because it focuses your search on what exactly you need to dive into to understand. Because there's, 6,000 MarTech vendors out there. Yes. You got to understand how they can drive the different use cases you might have within your company. But then you've got to understand the rest of the tech stack. You have to understand how you close business, how we drive contracts with your company, how you bill your customers. Where does customer data sit? Because it typically doesn't sit in the MarTech stack. But to take advantage of all the value that marketing can drive, You've got to understand how the rest of the company runs and how customers interact and where you store that information about the customer to really unlock, again, the value that the company can have in interacting digitally with its customers. So I think it's, narrowing your view on what part of technology, what different technology components can enable your use case that you're trying to drive and your priorities, but also understanding, how the rest of the company runs, because it drives credibility to understand that, and have the right conversations, to be able to, push on the right integration and have access to the right data and create the case. Because sometimes, for example, we've had to, shift what fields we actually enable or use or capture in Salesforce.com, right, in the CRM system, which is typically, a sales focused tool. But unless upfront you start looking at getting the right data, you can't actually have the rich interactions and profiling that you want to have with your customer. And that requires you to understand Salesforce.com. It requires you to understand data modeling and understanding how that data actually can impact that you capture, and how you capture it can actually impact the interactions you have and how you can measure sufficiently so you can keep improving the performance, and what type of reports you need. So it's really understanding data. It's really understanding the entire stack of the company, not just the MarTech stack.
Oh yeah, and as you pointed out earlier, as these as our interactions with customers become increasingly digital, that means we're tracking them on some system.
That's right.
And to be able to monitor the overall customer experience, you have to tie all that data in.
That's right.
That means you kind of have to know where all the data is and what systems are handling what part of the business, so that you can create that uniform view across all the silos and really understand your level of customer experience. So boy,
that's right.
Increasingly technical for sure. Now with all that data, it's hard for a human to really grasp that.
Yeah.
So what role do you see things like machine learning and artificial intelligence having going forward in marketing?
What's great is that there's a couple things. Number one, like you said, there's so much data that even if you had the most amazing, economists and, data analysts and data scientists on your team, there's so much data that one human actually to process all of it and to drive the analytics behind it is really daunting and hard. And most companies don't have like the economists that Amazon has, for example. Yes. And so what's amazing is the ability for, machine learning to be able to process massive volumes of data, to be able to see and analyze patterns and look at patterns and point out patterns that a human would take a long time to do, or you'd require such specific skills that you may not be able to hire for them or have them in-house.
Right.
So you can get through a lot more information and therefore learn quicker and adapt quicker to be able to drive the best engagement possible with your company, companies you're trying to do business with, or consumers you're trying to do business with, so that you can have an outstanding set of customer experiences. But that, so it lets you get through a ton of data and to be able to analyze it. I think, the challenging part is that you have to know what you're looking for, right? There's so much data there. You have to direct a machine learning engine to be able to have it know what it's looking for and what patterns to watch out for. And you have to define the thresholds to say, like, is 32 good or bad, right? Is an open rate, or click-through rate, you have to set your thresholds and say, well, alert me when it's this or that. Alert me, you have to know that at least fundamentally. And so building those skills in-house is necessary. But once you've got that, you can leverage machine learning to then drive the alerts so that you're not relying on people to do so. AI is interesting just because, there's an opportunity to be able to use chatbots and other elements to be able to automate with a lot of personality and personalization the interactions you have with your customers, so that the people you do have, you really focus them on things that machines can't do. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity, but it doesn't, you still need to understand, your strategy and what you're trying to drive in terms of customer engagement and customer interaction to be able to focus how you're going to use ML or how you're going to use AI to be able to drive a great customer experience. Otherwise, that's a daunting thing too. It's like, I don't know where to start. And so I think knowing where to start and how to use the data you have is a massive challenge for all of us right now.
Oh yeah, and I just feel for legacy environments which are struggling with data problems. Is the data valid? Is the data normalized? Does the data mean what I think it means? And then trying to build these machine learning pattern recognition and
That's right.
artificial intelligence engines on top of that data, and then trying to make sense of it. Wow, it's, it almost makes it seem easier just to start fresh.
Well, it is a lot easier to start fresh, but I think that that's where if you've got to have the talent within the marketing organization to understand which data is most important, because like in legacy environments for which most of us have to deal with in some way or another, even if you're an e-commerce, site that's been around for 7-8 years, that's still a legacy environment that you just can't layer, you just can't layer something else on top of it and access all the data you want cleanly right away. And so you've got to understand what you're looking for, and you've got to prioritize, okay, which data is most important now? Because you're never going to have perfect data right from the start. So you got to start somewhere, but knowing where to start and having people who understand data and technology on the marketing team can then really help you lock arms with the CIO and the tech team to be able to unearth that data and figure out what tweaks need to be made in the data models. Just because you do need to have some tweaks and understand what you're looking for before you can unlock, again, the value of ML or AI.
Yeah. And part of that value is actually the ability to be able to personalize user experiences, of course.
That's right.
So let me just ask you, when you personalize, that means you're needing to provide content that reflects an understanding of the person that you're
That's right.
personalizing with. What does that do for content generation? Does that mean you have to have a different version of content for every different kind of persona that you find among your customer? Does that mean there's going to be an exponential growth in content needed when you personalize? How do you actually do that?
I think what's interesting is that if you look at most companies, and they're big and small, most companies, if you look at 100 pieces of content, in most companies, 10 to 20 of those pieces are really the pieces that work hardest for them, right? Mm-hmm. So I think companies create a ton of content and don't use most of it. And most customers don't engage with most of it. And so I think there's two parts to this. There's one, understanding what content truly does resonate with customers, and just focus on developing that type of content. And I think tools with, machine learning tools, AI tools can help study and watch what content actually customers use most frequently, so that you're just developing that type of content and not developing the 80% that doesn't get used. Number one. Number two is less static content, like saying we're going to drive a retargeted ad to you versus me, who might have a different profile. It's like, I think we're starting to use pieces of content that then get customized by some kind of tool that says, look, you are part of the technology industry, you're driving for purchase, you are living in this country, and take individual pieces of content and stitch them together to create a customized piece for you, whether it's a personalized landing environment, whether it's a personalized email we're going to send you, or a personalized retargeted ad. Rather than create the content of every permutation, you create the ingredients of the permutation, and you have technology that can recognize through your profile who you are. And that technology stitches together the pieces to create your unique permutation versus what you might create for me.
Wow. That, to me, that's a whole conversation in itself. That's fascinating.
It totally is.
Fascinating. So let me ask you to put on your futurist hat.
Yeah.
Love that crystal ball. How do you see marketing, over the next 3 to 5 years? How would you anticipate it evolving?
I think it depends on the types of companies. I think that you're going to find companies, and you still see them out there. I think you're going to find some companies that, marketing is brand. Marketing focuses on brand, and sales drives the growth. But I think that the difference between good companies and great companies, the great companies are going to have marketing, essentially play the stewards of the customer experience alongside product, alongside sales, versus having just marketing focusing on the customer experience, having marketing play a seat at the table for an entire customer experience that, again, involves sales, involves the product itself. I think you're going to start to see more, need for, like we talked about earlier, an increased need for marketing folks to understand how to drive data, marketing understanding, and really understanding how to read a P&L, how to look at a balance sheet, how to talk to, a 10K if it's a public company, and look at the, public filing for the company and being able to speak to it. those marketing execs are going to be the ones, and marketing staff for that matter, are going to be the ones that are really going to be able to unlock the value and drive value for the company, because they understand how the business is run. And so it's a lot, it's a lot of understanding, how to emotionally connect with the customer, of course, and, directing the need to develop great content, but in the context of running a business. And so I think great companies are going to have their CMOs help be stewards of running the business and not just stewards of the brand.
You and I, before we started recording today, were talking about the appeal of working for a company that's purpose-driven.
Yeah.
So going forward, what role do you feel that is going to have in a company's success?
I think that's a really good, I think that that's a really good question. I think that there's companies that say they're purpose-driven through statements. I think that, if you look at how the market responds, I think you're going to find companies make fewer statements about being purpose-driven and just do it through action. Mm-hmm. And take a bigger stand on the purpose that they stand for. And so you look at companies like Nike, who did the partnership with Kaepernick. I mean, that wasn't just saying we're purpose-driven. We're actually driving the purpose that we're driving a message in the market that's incredibly polarizing. I mean, you saw an initial stock correction that was on the downward direction, but the ultimate stock correction was actually amazingly positive for Nike. And so not just saying, hey, we're purpose-driven and showing this in just the marketing materials, but actually in the products that they offer, in how they run their business. You see Dick's Sporting Goods now actually cut out, sales of guns in their stores. That's a massive shift in not just stating that they care about the safety of individuals, which is a very thin veneer on purpose, but actually running their company differently because of the purpose they believe in. So I think that companies that, are really, purpose-driven are no longer stating that they're purpose-driven, right? I think that that's it's somewhat passe and it's somewhat just very superficial. I think companies who are truly being purpose-driven and making a difference in the market are just doing so by their action, which is, I think, a lot more meaningful. It's really polarizing, so people are taking their bet. Nike definitely took a bet on Kaepernick. Dick's Sporting Goods is definitely taking a bet by not stocking guns, and that's an amazingly polarizing move. Yeah. But I think it's in those actions that companies are starting to, drive their purpose and send a message. Versus, again, just the thin veneer of stating that they're purpose-driven.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole fascinating discussion
totally.
Itself, in that consumers will vote their values with their pocketbook, right?
Yep. They are, right?
Yeah.
And initially, again, you saw the street react to Nike's decision, but you saw the customers react in kind, which then the street reacted to afterwards, and seeing, tremendous growth, which is interesting. Adidas had already made some interesting partnerships, and so their own statements through some of the partnerships that they had created, and they started to see, 2% and 5% increases in their share over a very short amount of time, which is pretty massive. Yes. For, an older company in Adidas. And so you're starting to see actually, customers vote with their feet, and the street actually realize that that's what's happening now and reward that behavior. So it's an interesting play and dynamic we're starting to see in the market.
Oh yeah, and I'm just very excited to watch how that plays out in the
me too.
So in wrapping up our fascinating conversation, what advice would you give to a freshman or a brand new rookie marketer right out of the university who's wanting to someday be in a position like you as a CMO? What would you tell them today they should be starting to invest in these areas so you'll be prepared for that leadership role in the future?
I would say understand the business, understand how the business runs, and understand how you translate what you do in terms of the, shareholder value if you're public, or your investor value if you're not. But just really be able to drive the straight line between what you do and how the company actually serves its customers. I would say understand the customer. I mean, if you want any arbiter in any role, whether you're, president, COO, whether you're, in IT or in marketing, the best tiebreaker is the customer. And the best thing to drive and coalesce multiple functions, or even just people within an organization, is the data about the customer. it takes the emotion out of it. It takes, it takes the, it drives a principled approach to say, hey, let's let the customer decide and dictate where we focus. It takes, again, it takes the, personality, ego, et cetera, and allows the company to focus where it needs to focus, which is on the customer. And when you do that, everybody gets to win. It changes the conversation. So I think understand the business, understand the customer. And I think in big part, go outside of marketing and understand how the rest of the company actually drives the value for the customer. Understand what their challenges are and find some common ground. I think that finding that common ground, whether you are in marketing or whether you're in finance, whether you're in IT, finding the common ground with the rest of the business helps you just be more effective in what you do within your own function. So I think understanding, how all the other pieces of the company drive that value is epically important as well.
Thank you so much, Mika, for sharing all that, your experience, your last 12 months.
That's crazy.
Can't wait to see what the next 12 months presents.
Me too.
So it's so fascinating. And this was valuable for everyone that's starting in marketing, that wants to be in a leadership in any capacity going forward. So again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. It's so good to see you. I look forward to seeing you again.
All right.
Thank
and
you.
I want to thank everyone out there that joined us today.
Likewise. Thank you.